Alright, the purpose of this video is to show you how to annotate for authorial choices, including rhetorical choices, structural choices, and stylistic choices. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read the prompt, not because I'm going to write the essay, but I want to provide, or I want to get as much context as I can from it. So it says, in the following letter, Abigail Adams writes to her son John Quincy Adams, who is traveling abroad with his father John Adams, a United States diplomat and later the country's second president. Read the letter carefully, then in a well-developed essay, analyze the rhetorical strategies Adam uses to advise her son. Support your analysis with specific references to the text. So I want to make sure I understand my rhetorical situation here. So I'm going to start by pointing out that Abigail Adams is the speaker. She is the one writing the letter. And John Quincy Adams is the audience. We have a year for context. And then we also have this fact that he is going on a trip with his father. And I would say that's the exigence of the letter as well as provided context. So, mother writing to her son who will someday become president himself. So, we also have context here in terms of the year. When was the letter sent? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through and I'm going to try to find examples of the different types of authorial choices. So it says, "My dear son, I hope you have had no occasion either from enemies or the dangers of the sea to repent your second voyage to France. If I had thought your reluctance arose from proper deliberation, or that you were capable of judging what was most for your own benefit, I should not have urged you to accompany your father and brother when you appeared so averse to the voyage." So the first thing I'm seeing here, I'm going to use purple for my structural choices. Anytime you see an if statement, that is usually an example of cause and effect. And that's what we're seeing here. She says, if his complaining about this trip had seemed warranted or that she thought he was right, she wouldn't have sent him. So there's kind of that if-then structure that we know is cause and effect, which is one of our methods of development. Okay, let's keep reading. "You, however, readily submitted to my advice, and I hope will never have occasion yourself or give me reason to lament it. Your knowledge of the language must give you greater advantages now than you could possibly have reaped whilst ignorant of it, and as you increase in years, you will find your understanding opening and daily improving. Some author that I have met with compares a judicious traveler to a river that increases its stream and furthers it the further it flows from its source, or to certain springs which, running through rich veins of minerals, improve their quality as they pass along. It will be expected of you, my son, that as you are favored with superior advantages under the instructive eye of a tender parent, your improvement should bear some proportion to your advantages. Nothing is wanting with you but attention, diligence, and steady application. Nature has not been deficient." So I see another example of a method of development, particularly this sentence right here. So I'm going to highlight the whole sentence. And in this case, she's using comparison. She compares a traveler like her son John Quincy to a river, stating that as a river flows away from its source, it gains nutrients, it gains minerals and good qualities. She's making the comparison that as a traveler, he will do the same. Another thing that I noticed in this particular section, I'm going to get a green out, with this final sentence here, is that it's syntactically different than previous sentences. So if you notice, every sentence prior to this is kind of a longer sentence. It takes up, 4 to 5 lines of the passage. This is the only one that's like really short and to the point. And so essentially we see a change to a simple sentence, which, because it contrasts with the ones before and after it, can lead to emphasis. All right, let's keep reading. These are times in which a genius would wish to live. It is not in the still calm of life or the repose of a pacific station that great characters are formed. Would Cicero have shown so distinguished an orator if he had not been roused, kindled, and inflamed by the tyranny of Catiline, Verres, and Mark Antony? The habits of a vigorous mind are formed in contending with difficulties. Okay, so what I see here is a rhetorical choice. Let me get another color out here for those, blue. particularly, it's kind of two happening in one. She poses a question, so it's an example of rhetorical questioning, but it is also an example of allusion because she's referring to a historical figure of Cicero. So I'm just going to write this is both an allusion and a rhetorical question. All right, let's continue. All history will convince you of this, and that wisdom and penetration are the fruits of experience, not the lessons of retirement and leisure. Great necessity calls out great virtues. So I'm going to actually mark that sentence as well. Make my highlighter a little bit bigger. Because this is a great example of parallel structure, because we have this great necessities bring out great virtues. That repeating pair of the word great followed by a noun is parallel because it repeats in the one sentence. When a mind is raised and animated by scenes that engage the heart, then those qualities which would otherwise lie dormant wake into life and form the character of a hero and the statesman. War, tyranny, and desolation are the scourges of the Almighty, and ought no doubt to be deprecated. Yet it is your lot, my son, to be an eyewitness of these calamities in your own native land, and at the same time to owe your existence among a people who have made a glorious defense of their invaded liberties, and who, aided by a generous and powerful ally with the blessing of heaven, will transmit the inheritance to ages yet unborn. Nor ought it be one of the least of your incitements towards exerting every power and faculty of your mind, that you have a parent who has taken so large and active a share in this contest, and discharged the trust reposed in him with so much satisfaction as to be honored with the important embassy which present calls him abroad. The strict and inviolable regard you have ever paid to truth gives me pleasing hope that you will not swerve from her dictates, but add justice, fortitude, and every manly virtue which can adorn a good citizen, do honor to your country, and render your parents supremely happy, particularly your ever affectionate mother. So a couple more things I noticed. When Abigail Adams is talking about her husband, right, in this section right here, she uses a lot of I think intentional word choice. She says things like, he has the trust reposed in him, he's provided his work with satisfaction, he's been honored. That word choice creates what I would call a proud tone. That is her attitude towards her husband, and it comes across in the passage for sure. Then in this last section, I think this is a really good example of pathos. Sometimes when we think about pathos, we think it's just, making someone feel sad or things like that. But pathos can be appealing to any emotion. And for this one, I think this is a great example of her appealing to his loyalty and sense of duty. In other words, she says, I know that you're going to make me proud because you're my son and you'll be a good citizen. And so she's kind of appealing to that sense of duty he has as a young person. Then there's also another thing that I noticed syntactically kind of over the course of the passage. So what I'm going to do is I'm kind of going to use my green under pen because I kind of got to overlap what I have. But there are multiple times when she talks in sets of three. So for example, the very first one I noticed where she says, nothing is wanting with you but attention, diligence, and steady application. And then a little bit later, she says Cicero was roused, kindled, and inflamed. And then continuing on the next one, she says war, tyranny, and desolation. And then in the very last paragraph, she says justice, fortitude, and every manly virtue. As well, she says, can adorn a good citizen, do honor to your country, and render your parents supremely happy. So adorn a good citizen, do honor to your country, and render your parents supremely happy. So just what I'm noticing in all of those examples, I'm gonna draw lines to them from here. But they are all a syntax choice that I see throughout the passage. There's more down here too. Oh, and one more at the very bottom. Different times where she's kind of using that set of 3 to make her argument. And so from here I have a range of different authorial choices. Again, the purple are my structural choices, those uses of method of development, first using cause and effect, and then later the comparison. Everything I have in green are syntactic or stylistic choices. So 2 of them are syntax, and then I have this note about the proud tone that's being revealed over here, which is of course diction. And then rhetorical choices I found I have up here, the rhetorical question and allusion, and then also pathos and appealing to his sense of duty below. And so what my next step would be is, based on these things I noticed, to analyze them, I go in and try to determine the effect that Abigail Adams is hoping this will have on her son.